Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Boujee and Unbothered. You have Sasha here.
And Kim.
And so I wanted to pose a question to the group. What is it about a holiday or birthday that could potentially wreck what seems to be a good, easy flowing relationship or like situation? And I'll tell you about what prompted this question. So Kim and I are big Insecure fans, so we definitely watch the show. We usually will talk about it. So in season 4, episode 3, Lawrence is dating his new bae. What's the girl's name? It's some weird name.
I keep calling her Condoleezza Rice, but I think it's Condola.
Condola. I was going to say yes. Controlla, and I was like, that's wrong. He's dating Condola. And, they got through a couple little, initial hurdles, the awkwardness with Issa's character, everything's kind of flowing, and then Thanksgiving rolls around. And so they kind of have this, awkward-ish conversation. So I don't think that Lawrence quite peeped how awkward it was. But, they start talking about Thanksgiving. Lawrence, and he starts with inviting Condola to his place for something, just the two of them. Maybe they can do something. And then Condola says, no, I'm actually doing a little Friendsgiving. And then inadvertently, I don't even think Lawrence realized, he invites himself to the function. He was not invited, but he invited himself to the function. And then it was kind of through that obviously, in meeting the friends and having some conversations, some things got revealed to him that made him question their situation, what they're doing, and basically his place in her life. So, using that as kind of like a basis, it got me thinking, like, it kind of always is that way in terms of you could be going really good, especially if it's a new situation with somebody. You're kind of getting to know them. Things are going along all cute, and then a milestone hits, a birthday, a holiday, something comes around that kind of forces you to look at the situation differently. So, Kim, do you have any initial thoughts in being in that early dating stage? And maybe you're thinking about, I think I could see this person long term. I'm starting to take them a little bit seriously. Maybe this is going towards a serious situation, or you're starting to think about them as being, a serious situation for you, but you haven't yet hit a milestone in terms of like a holiday or birthday. What are your thoughts about that?
So I love birthdays. Everyone knows I basically celebrate my birthday all month. So a birthday is very important. And I think it'll depend on the person, right? There's some people that are really low key about their birthday, don't really, want much. And then there's some people that obviously value the celebration and the thought that goes into it. So if you're a person that values the birthday and you've articulated that to your partner, I think how they treat you on your birthday or around your birthday is going to be really indicative in terms of them listening and understanding who you are and what's important. Because if I've made this clear that this is a priority for me and this is important to me, if you value me, then you will respect that enough and put effort to demonstrate that you heard me. That's where I stand on the birthday piece. I mean, even if someone is really low key and doesn't want too much, I think just the thought, any thought or just acknowledgement or recognition would be sufficient. But I think birthdays, to me, really kind of demonstrate the opportunity for someone to ultimately show how much they care about your actual existence. That's really how I look at it. I don't know if it's dramatic, but that's where I stand on the birthday piece.
No, I absolutely agree. I actually feel like I feel the same. I feel like and it's funny because I've often found myself newly dating someone around my birthday. I don't know what it is about me in the fall. I feel like I'm always meeting somebody in September, and then October rolls around, it's my birthday. But it always kind of left me in an interesting situation of do I expect anything for my birthday? How do I how do I guess, reconcile this situation, what we're doing, if what I get on my birthday is lackluster? So, I mean, I agree. I think that it shows you where someone sees you and will ultimately end up seeing you in their life if your birthday comes and they do absolutely nothing, right? And you're supposed to be dating, you're supposed to be in a whole situation with them, you're supposed to be progressing, and it comes and there's absolutely nothing that's being done. And then I think even the type of interaction, if maybe they do something, but what it is that they do, I think can be an indicator of, how do they see you, and an emphasis, do they actually, are they taking you seriously? Do they see you as being somebody who could be there, potentially long term, or do you matter to them? So I do agree. Like, I think that a birthday, especially because that's specific to that person, I feel like birthdays and holidays are slightly different, though we're kind of grouping them similarly. I think it very much.
One last thought about the birthday. I agree with everything that you said, but also something that I do take note of is the timing of the acknowledgement. Like, even if you have something planned for later in the day or whatever the case is, I need a birthday acknowledgement between midnight and about 10 a.m., whatever time zone I'm in. Like, I don't, once we start going into afternoon, pretty much half my birthday has already expired, and I don't want an acknowledgement after that. So I always... Is
that from the significant other, or like the potential, the dating person, or is that from everybody?
Oh, that is an everyone rule.
Okay.
That is an everyone rule. Like, acknowledging my birthday is literally honoring my existence. And
y'all got concerted.
So you can't stroll in with your afternoon text or phone call and think it's gonna be okay.
Okay.
So I'm sorry. That's just another point.
I actually do agree with the timing. I'm gonna take it back to the dating scenario. For me, it doesn't really matter. Like, friends, it's not a huge deal. Though I do keep track. Like, I will keep score. And this kind of goes back to something that we talked about before. If you're somebody who's close to me, like, if I talk to you, if a calendar week goes by on average and I'm talking to you and I'm talking to you frequently, I better be getting an early ass happy birthday. I don't want no late happy birthday. If you're just kind of like a friend I talk to once in a while, I don't really care. But if you're part of the rotation in the week, I'm going to be clocking that. However, the significant other, that's definitely, that's important too. Or even like if we're just dating, because that's the scenario here. If we're just starting to date, I expect, like, you can't be rolling around at like,
you should be leading the path.
Talking about happy birthday. Exactly.
No,
we should be leading the path. Deep into the plan that you already laid out for my ass by 2:30. By noon, I should already know what we're doing.
Yes.
So what do you think about the holiday situation? Because the holiday situation could even be, depending on the holiday, but we'll just say for all intents and purposes, it's the Thanksgiving, Christmas, the religious holidays where, you're either spending with loved ones. So that could be a little bit trickier of a landscape, because usually that does include family and very close friends.
So I think we kind of differ a little bit on the approach, but for me, holidays, I don't really weigh the seriousness of the relationship or the status. If the holidays are coming and we're spending time together, then you should be having some level of exposure to my family or friends if we're like in the early stages of dating, because to me that's a qualifier. I need to see how you interact with my friends. I need to see how you interact with my family. I need to see what my mom thinks of you, what my dad thinks of you, and that actually is part of my decision making, because family is important to me. So I don't want to go too far down the road and not have you have that kind of exposure and then realize that you're not complementary to my family dynamic, because then it's not going to work anyway. So I'd rather do that early and realize if I need to cut my losses or if this has potential.
Okay. I actually think that makes a lot of sense. I do move different than that. Um, I am very, I will say I'm opposite to him when it comes to that. I think that we come to the same place in the end, but in terms of how I move is different. I'm definitely I need to know how I feel about you first. And I feel like it's almost from a perspective of being protective of that kind of inner circle relationship, my family, my friends, and not wanting to, because of not wanting to just bring a bunch of, I never want to be that person that's always bringing a new person to the, to the cookout or a new person
Right.
to Thanksgiving or to Christmas. We always see those jokes in movies. Like, I never want to be that person that, like, every year it's a new person. So I think coming from that perspective, it's like, if you make it to that, we've definitely had a long-standing history, and we likely are already together before that happens. But I mean, I think that ultimately, to your point, right? Like, if you do wait that long and then introduce them to your friends and your family all late, and it doesn't flow, like, what do you do? But I think go ahead. I was gonna say, at least in a new dating scenario where I likely wouldn't. I mean, I'm not opposed to going to your house and going to your function or going to around your family and friends. So I would take note, even if it's early, of whether I get an invite or we have we make sure that we have time on the day. Like, I do think that that's something to pay attention to. Like, are you nowhere to be found? Because I will tell you one thing, that will tell you exactly where you stand with somebody. If they're nowhere to be found, like around the holidays, they ain't messing with you like that.
Okay, so that actually takes it back to a previous topic that we have. So, holidays to some degree, something is going to be planned. So if you're not invited, or let's say that only after you ask what the plans are,
Lord,
that they actually offer an invitation, that should tell you exactly where you stand, because things were being planned and you have to decide if you were part of the plans and knew up front, or you're more of an afterthought. Well, it's like, well, if you insist, then you can come. So that already sets the tone. But I think, going back to the point, in terms of kind of just the difference that we have in terms of waiting or just jumping in and introducing them. The thing that I think is really important is that when two people are interacting with each other, you see one side of someone, and everyone is multifaceted. So in that holiday dynamic where you have different people, different ages, and just, people know you based on different stages of your life, and those people know you well enough, and it's not like they have to actually just question them, but just the interaction, I think, is an important factor, because I don't necessarily rely on other people to make my judgments for them, but I think it's important to understand that other people may see things that you may not see. And you can factor that in. It doesn't necessarily need to be like, if somebody says they don't like them, that you don't have to deal with them, but it's understanding why. Like, if you've had conversations and they know the level of reverence that you have, like, for particular friends or family members, and they take the extra mile to, be charming, or, try to have that good engagement, I think that that's very telling. But if they know certain dynamics or certain family dynamics and just seem like they're not factored that in, nor do they care, or maybe they're aloof in any of the engagement, I think that says a lot about how they ultimately value the things that are important to you.
I think that that's fair. I actually think that all of those points make sense. And I think I'll even throw in another kind of, because I think, we got to talking about, what are those kind of tent poles in a dating experience that can kind of catapult it either into, the next level, or have it fizzle out, especially in the scenario that we pose. So, I would agree that, if you're kind of dating someone and you're thinking in your mind, oh, this is something that could be serious, but you haven't seen them around, your friends or your family, and you haven't gone through either a holiday period or a birthday, like, can you really make that call yet if you haven't done that? I would even throw, because you said something that struck something for me, which is people are different when it's just you and them versus when they're in a social setting, right? So I would actually even throw like just a general party or function into that as well. Like, I definitely think with the holidays and the birthdays, those are very kind of reverent type of days where, you need to kind of watch the behavior to really kind of understand the full picture of where is this relationship going. But I do agree, because you might get to just even a general party and see them around others where you haven't seen them before. It's always just been a you and them scenario, and they could be a completely different person. So,
I agree.
And that will definitely tell you about their personality and who they are and who you are to them, because I've definitely seen those situations where people have come into the party together and it's like they're single when they get to the function. They don't even look back at each other. And I think that's to me that's very telling. To me that's very telling. Or like,
I wasn't expecting you to say that, but okay.
It's very telling. Or like one person sulking in the corner and they're not mixing and mingling. Maybe you expected that they would actually interact. Let's say you bring your bae to a party with your friends, and you're expecting that they're going to actually be able to mix and mingle and hold their own conversation, and they turn into a wallflower, and you really weren't expecting that. Or they're sulking in the corner, and you have to tend to them for the whole party to see if they're comfortable. I will say that's a pet peeve of mine. I can't do that. But, I think it definitely shows you a lot more about who that person is and how much effort they're willing to put in for you if you bring them in those types of social settings.
So now this is where the gray area comes in. So I'm going to agree with you to a certain extent. So I think it's important to think about these social settings and the different interactions, but you also need to remember who the person is. If they're an extrovert and they like to be around people and they have no problem mingling, and you bring them in the social setting and they don't, then I think that that's a fundamental issue, right? Because they should be in their element. But I think if you have someone who's a natural introvert and kind of clams up around people, I think you need to respect that to a certain degree. And in a social setting, if they're making attempts to do things out of their comfort zone, there's a certain level of leeway that I will allow, because I know that that's really hard for them and they're doing their best. So I think, to the example that you had, if it's an extrovert and they're being a wallflower, then obviously, like, they obviously are trying to change the vibe or something for some personal reasons. But if they're an introvert and they just don't like to be around people, but are there just because it's important to me, I would be okay with that.
Okay. I'd never really thought about the nuances there. I always kind of thought about more of the, I think that, we kind of aligned though. Are you putting in the energy and the effort to at least attempt to socialize, or are you just kind of giving up and not really trying, or just existing and kind of being standoffish? And like, I did not know that to be a part of your personality. So going back to the original scenario where Lauren, like, a lot of things seem to be unveiled in that kind of Thanksgiving, Friendsgiving day with Condola and her friends. What would you kind of, if Lawrence was here, what advice would you give him? Like, what would you say to him in terms of the state of their relationship?
Well, he shouldn't have invited himself. Like, it was very clear that she had a planned activities with her people, and it was very clear that since she didn't extend the invite, that he shouldn't have invited himself. But I also think that she should have stood her ground, that if he wasn't part of the plan, then she should have just said, no, I don't want you there. I think for him, I think the takeaway when I looked at the episode, I thought it was interesting because everyone was coupled up. And so he was learning, because again, they've only spent time with each other. So he was learning about who she was through the eyes of her friends and other people. And during that conversation, it was revealed that she doesn't want a family. And that was a revelation for him, because that's something that's important to him. And he, you know, I don't know if he would have gotten to that conversation with her sooner if it wasn't for that interaction. So I think that there was a benefit to actually attending, where he started to better understand who she was holistically and realize that they needed to have that conversation about the potential future. And if you're not aligned with future goals, then there needs to be a reassessment of what exactly are we doing here. So I think it was good nuggets that he got from her friends. And I think you need to factor that in and think about, are you here to have a good time right now? Or is it, if you're thinking about more of a long-term future, then you need to have more conversations about your alignment with your future goals.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think, and I know that we'll, you know, I think that this in and of itself could be, you know, its own topic. But to me, that's an example of, you know, maybe an organic situation gone wrong, where they're just kind of going with the flow, but it's very clear that there were foundational discussions that probably should have been had, but hadn't been had. And while they're in the midst of getting all caught up with the feel goods of the moment, you know, clearly there were big directional things that were missed that should have been aligned on from Jump Street. Like the fact that, I mean, I think he did know. It didn't seem like it came as a surprise to him. I don't remember if she had revealed that she was divorced, but it seemed like he had already known that. But what happened as a result of that divorce that kind of changed or shaped the way that she sees, you know, marriage, family, and what does that ultimately mean for the future of their relationship. I do agree with you in terms of he shouldn't have invited himself. And I mean, kind of going back to the original question, I don't think he should have had to invite himself. And I think that the fact that he did have to invite himself should have also given him pause to think about, is this going the way that I thought that it was going? And are we at the point that maybe I've been thinking that we're at? But, you know, she's planning this whole Friendsgiving. The fact that, like, they kind of brought up Thanksgiving kind of so late in the game, and it seemed like kind of impromptu too, like a couple days beforehand anyway, and she was planning this whole thing and he didn't even know, you know, to me, that should have actually even been a bit of an aha moment for him too that was missed.
Agreed. I surprisingly agree with everything you just said.
See, we be making it together in the end, y'all. We be making it together in the end. I feel like
it's a long road. It's a long, diverging road, but they ultimately get to the same destination.
Yes, it's a struggle road, but we get there. We get there on the way. I definitely feel like the Boujee girl takeaway is, before you start getting too swept up, I feel like there were a few gems that were dropped. And I will say, Kim, you got me rethinking some things now. I'm feeling like I'm doing stuff that I need to reevaluate. But before you start thinking that a situation that you're in, though it might be going very well in terms of the chemistry and the connection, just the two of you, before you start getting too far down that road, you know, I do feel like if you haven't gone through some type of a milestone, some kind of a social scenario, but particularly a birthday or a holiday or both, you know, can you really and should you really be thinking about this person, you know, seriously until you've gone through those things and really seen how you guys navigate that together? And if that's in alignment with what you would expect someone to treat you as, or, you know, how you would want them to be with you during those days, if they see you seriously. So I would say definitely hold off on considering someone as a serious boyfriend, girlfriend, relationship partner until if you haven't gone through birthday or holiday, or I would even argue both, and see how they've navigated that with you.
That was a very long takeaway.
Sorry, guys, long-winded. But y'all know what I'm saying.
Girl, I think we do. And I will say my high-level Boujee girl takeaway is if someone cares about you, they're going to care about the things you care about. Plain and simple. And you just have to give them opportunities to be able to demonstrate that.
Well, that was succinct. I think
how I like it.
I think that, it's worthy to be said that if birthdays and holidays do mean something to you, you have to express that up front too. Because if they don't know that you're a birthday person, you might not get the energy that you would want to get if they didn't, if they knew you were, as you would if they knew you were a birthday person. So keep that in mind to communicate.
Absolutely. The people, there's no mind readers here. If you need to communicate the things that are important to you so they know that, so they will act accordingly.
Okay. All right. Well, guys, that's the end of another very interesting and enlightening discussion here on Boujee Unbothered. Never forget the Unbothered principle, which is stay moisturized, stay unbothered,
and be unpredictable.
All right. We'll see you on the next episode.